Hello everybody out there in YouTube land, and welcome to DC Fans United. So before I forget, I've got a quick shout out for my friends over at OutrightGeekery.com. It's a great geek website, and I have a link for them in the description box. So it's been on my mind quite a bit lately how the print industry as a whole is dying, but it primarily affects me and imagine the people who follow this channel in the fact that print comics are dying as an industry. And by and large, it seems to be a fact that is being ignored by the comic book industry. And in one of my previous videos, I discussed whether or not Marvel is to blame, and I have a link for that video in the description box as well. So, by and large, yes and no. You know, if you look at just print in general, if you look at newspapers, magazines, and all that, it has been declining a great deal over the years. And yeah, so primarily a lot of people are blaming Marvel because they've always been the industry leader. They sell the most books, they've got the most popular characters, you know, they've got Spider-Man, Captain America, and all that good stuff. So, I titled this video, Can DC Comics Save the Comic Book Industry? And I'd kind of hoped that they could, but now I'm not so sure. Looking at the September to 2017 sales numbers, it looks kind of bleak. Now, first off, you'll notice that Marvel has the #1 and #3 selling book, and that's fantastic. Honestly, Marvel should be the industry leader. And I'll show you some numbers from 20 years ago in 1997 when they honestly were the industry leader. Now, first off, we'll take a look at this. Only the top 4 books sold over 100,000 copies, and of those 4, 3 are events. That's pretty bad if you think about it. So Marvel Legacy, Dark Knight's Metal, and Venomverse, #1. And also, look at that. You have a #1, you have 2 #1s in the top 3. That's not bad necessarily, but it's just not something that can be repeated, you know. There's only going to be one #1 for Marvel Legacy, for instance. And look at the cover price, of $6. That's brutal. So anyways, okay, Marvel killed it. Their #1 sold almost 300,000 units. That is fantastic. Unfortunately, a lot of those are variant covers, and we'll see next month if there's a large drop-off on issue #2. So that's great. #1 selling 300,000, that's better than it was 20 years ago. The problem is only the top 4 books sold over 100,000, and honestly, 3 of them are events and 2 of them are Batman books. So unless it's Batman or an event, the comic book industry can't move more than 100,000 units on any given issue. And once you drop down, yeah, you only have to go down as far as, say, by the time you get to the 20th selling book, it's, yeah. And look at this, Venomverse #2 is already down 50,000 units. So between #1, that's over a 50% drop between #1 and #2. You know, it's really bad. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the sales numbers from 20 years ago. And yeah, the #1 book, Uncanny X-Men, yeah, it only sold 163,000 units. But you know what? It was issue number 349. It wasn't #1 of the biggest event from the biggest comic book company, okay? It was just 349, number X-Men, you know. And second book, X-Men #69, okay? Then Spawn, Fantastic Four. So other than Spawn, these are all Marvel characters. DC doesn't pop up until #9 with a JLA comic. And even #9 is over 100,000. You have to go down to the 12th place before you drop below 100,000. So 20 years ago, books were selling a lot better. So one spot of good news is the sales numbers for Mr. Miracle #2 are a lot better than the sales numbers for Mr. Miracle #1. So some books are picking up and selling well. That's really kind of an exceptional one, though. So that's part of what led me to wonder if DC could save the comic book industry. I would certainly argue that they're putting out the highest quality content right now as far as their books, the writing, and the art quality. But DC is relying pretty heavily on Dark Knight's Metal right now and all its tie-ins. So we will see. Right now they're falling victim to a lot of the same mistakes that Marvel is doing with a plethora of variant covers and really just flooding the shelves with all kinds of stuff. If you look at some of their Looney Tunes books and whatnot, they really aren't selling all that well at all. In fact, I couldn't even find Wacky Raceland anywhere. It's kind of a bleak video Honestly, I think the print comic book industry is dying as a whole, and that is really summed up here in the comic book unit sales. So just over the year to year, so in 2016, they sold 9% more comics than this year. So that might sound like not such a huge number, but that amounts to many tens of millions of comic books that weren't sold this year. So I guess that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and if anything, I think hope for the comic book industry probably lies with the indie comics. And I think within the next decade, aside from digital comics, print comics are going to become a very niche industry, catering almost entirely to the adult market, which will be an ever-aging market. As one of my commenters pointed out, he said, why would I read a comic book when I could just watch a movie or play a video game? And I believe that's the attitude of a lot of younger potential readers. You know, it used to be a comic book was seen as this little short lazy thing you could just read real quick, but now for a lot of people even reading 20 pages is too much effort apparently. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Maybe it's not as dire as I think. I certainly hope not. Alright, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe.
End of line.